Hello and welcome to the Sits Insight Spotlight. I've got a very special guest with me today, Ian Aitchison. Hi, Ian.
I'm Ian Aitchison. I work here at Ivanti. I'm job title Senior Product Director here at Ivanti, and I'm responsible for Ivanti's delivery of product around service management, asset management, identity, and automation.
You guys are working quite hard on addressing the topic that we're going to talk about. We're going to reference, obviously, Ivanti and some of the product things that you're up to. But I think this is a universal topic. I don't think there's anyone in IT that's not affected by this.
Yeah.
What is that topic? So we're going to be talking about the complexity of IT and ways that we can start to simplify it.
We've built these areas of expertise inside organizations. So you have a security team, and you have a server team, and you have an endpoint management team, and you have service management, and you have all these different functions, maybe asset management, and they're all using the best possible technology they can find to help them do their job the best they can. And they're in effective but siloed functions within IT. And so we have a situation where, as IT has fought to retain that quality of service and that standard of delivery and be secure and effective, what we're seeing are organizations have built silos which are holding them back. They're very good at something, very good at something vertical, but they're struggling to do things horizontally.
So is it it's unavoidable, isn't it, that IT has to be more complex because it's bigger, it's more important, it's more expansive? Is it pretty much unavoidable that we have to accept that complexity? We've just got to find ways to do it better.
Well, no. I think what we've seen, again, over time is you get core technical capabilities in tools, whatever that tool may be, and there's demand to do more with it, to extend it, to add something else, and something that maybe starts with a configurable framework gets expanded, and more features and more configuration and more options. Historically, yes, those pillars, those silos have built more and more capabilities stacked on top of each other, again, vertically. And we're in a position now, I think, where we're seeing technology doesn't have to be like that. It needs to be a simpler experience for people that use it, a simpler experience for those that receive the benefit from it. Imagine you've been brought into an organization and you need to make some changes to how that business succeeds. We talk about digital transformation, right? That's a common buzzword, and you can kind of simplify that down into making the business get better at what it does, change the way it does what it does. Now, IT is probably the way you're going to do that. IT is the fundamental component that lets you change the way people work, introduce new ways of working. And if you take a 100% siloed approach, it's very, very difficult to introduce new ways of working into a business, because the silos stop you building cross-silo capabilities. They stop you automating and connecting together that strength of capability. There are common silos that you see in organizations, and one of the first steps would be to integrate across those silos, as I said. So to work with an automation framework that lets you very easily, as you know, the examples I gave, when a new asset arrives in the business and it's onboarded as part of the same workflow, push out the right operating system to it, push out other applications, check your licenses are correct, and then ask somebody to go and deliver it, and it's delivered, and then the individual that receives it completes a survey to say they're happy. I mean, I just went all the way through software asset management, provisioning, OS deployment, service management survey, that whole sequence. And it involved people, but it also involved siloed technology. And that's where automation can take those steps and speed them up. The second step, and this is where, obviously, as you know, a future-sighted software innovator like Ivanti, where we're looking and where we're working, is there's a next generation to all of this. There's a next generation. And that next generation says, you know what? You shouldn't have to integrate between technologies. You should go to one place where those technologies are enhanced by a common, it's almost a common layer that brings you things you couldn't do previously. A common place where you can see all together the user, the request, the asset, the software, the license, the OS deployment, the survey. You can follow the flow of that. And you may be using some pieces inside some of those pillar technologies, which are great at what you do. I'm not saying they don't do amazing things, but you shouldn't have to be waiting and dipping and going in and out of them. Now, it all sounds a little bit, far-sighted, but it's not, because we're seeing organizations doing this now. They're working on those journeys, automating those journeys, providing interfaces that let people oversee those journeys, delivering machine learned recommendations from data that might exist traditionally in one silo only, and in another silo only, and in another silo only. Well, why not merge that together and give you an insight? An insight, a recommendation might be, well, we know the operating systems you use in your organization, but we also know the specification of the machines they run on. We know the end of life of those OSs. We know the new OS, which will be available for you. We could upgrade you, but the spec of your machine isn't good enough to receive that new OS. So you're going to need a new machine. So your manager's going to need to approve that spend, but the overall cost saving and efficiency will be as demonstrated. And that's only possible when you merge together all those different sets of data into one place.
Is this an instance where the technology is catching up with the concept? Because the things that you're talking about, running IT services or any kind of IT delivery as an end-to-end cohesive service, that's not new, is it? I mean, if you think back to the very origins of ITIL and any kind of process approach, that's trying to achieve that. And we try and avoid, don't we, in terms of, it was a good bit of branding there, well done, Ian. Also try and perhaps avoid the elephant in the room. We don't want to say, this is all about technology. We've always talked about people, process, technology, but there's got to be a point, isn't there, where we say, actually, the technology perhaps hasn't been there, because logically, if you are dealing with, say, in the example that you've given, 5 pieces of technology that are all trying to talk to each other, that is clearly going to be very complex, and there's 5 points of connection that could very easily fall over.
Absolutely right. And this is why it has been a challenge. I've just scribbled on a piece of paper here: disconnected IT, integrated IT, unified IT. The traditional model, disconnected, you pass a ticket to somebody and you wait, and then they go into another tool to do something. There's no integration, there's no automation. They come back and they say, I've done that job. What they do may or may not be reflected in any management of work. They're just doing things in tools, and there's huge waits. Everybody wanted to get to integrated IT. Okay, integrated IT is where, from here, I can pass a request for some activity across into another silo technology. And that was hard. It's a lot easier now. Common API frameworks, common automation platforms make it a lot easier. But even so, you are dependent upon those APIs, which may be talking across multiple vendors, right? So you may have different vendors in those different silo technologies. They change their products, whether cloud or prem, they're changing, they're updating, the APIs change. You change your workflow in one area, how's that going to change how it interacts with another technology in another area? So it's easier as integrated, but it's still complicated. We are moving beyond integrated IT. We are approaching unified IT. The unified IT is where, rather than a dependency between different separate technologies, it becomes one. It becomes one technology. What you see is a merged presentation of things that you might have previously said, I see that in my service management toolset. I see that in my asset management toolset. I see that in my security toolset. I see that in my identity toolset. Imagine if you see them all together.
How far have you come with that as an organization? Because I know we've had a lot of conversations over the years, and the kind of goal, as I understood it, for Ivanti was to bring together, I mean, there's been so many acquisitions and the mergers and everything but that's the end game, isn't it? To get to that point where we need all of that stuff. Now we need to just tie it all together. So where are you on that?
Yeah, you'd almost say it was a carefully considered strategy, wouldn't you? The acquisition of expertise human expertise and technology capability in particularly those areas I've been describing, around endpoint, around security, around service, around asset, around identity. So we have an acquisition history where we've built up through selected acquisition organizations that are already expert in those areas. And I won't list off all the old brand names, but they were all very strong in what they do. And that isn't just a case of saying, hey, we've got some money to spend, let's buy something new. There's a reason you do that. There's a reason you do that, which is we believe the future of IT is unified, and that requires vendors to, rather than have totally separated technologies, move to a single, almost a platform model for those capabilities. How are we doing with that? We're doing great. The way we're doing great is primarily thanks to the cloud. Okay, because a lot of what we're talking about needs to involve machine learning and shared data. B, it needs to evolve quickly. So a cloud platform capability, we call it Ivanti Cloud, which is a value add into all of our service management customers, or our asset management, or our endpoint, or security, or identity. They can all get benefit from this new capability called Ivanti Cloud. Built up in the cloud, it takes data from customers on-prem, discovered data from multiple sources, from not only Ivanti sources, but many of the common brand names you'll know and use outside of Ivanti. From in the cloud, it brings them all together. It merges that information, it gives you insights, it provides you what we call smart advisors, which are recommendation engines. It provides now an automation platform with that lets you drive action.
It would be remiss of me as a journalist not to try and deflate the conversation slightly by challenging some of that. Not challenging it, I mean, it makes perfect sense, doesn't it, to have that unification. Yeah. We have to be talking about here quite a lot of disruption to get to that point, don't we? I mean, you're talking about replacing lots of legacy systems. I'm sure once it's very different if you've got a clean slate type of organization, greenfield site. What does it look like from the perspective of someone that's thinking, well, great, I'd love all that stuff, but I've got all this. What do I do with it?
Yeah, and that's actually a very, very pertinent and relevant question, because the technology in those silos has had a great deal of time and money and investment and expertise into bringing it into an organization and running it. You can't just stop. We know that. You can't just stop using it. And we don't expect that. That's not the game plan. The game plan is not, hey, everybody switch off all of these things tomorrow and switch over to something new. We know that's hard. Apart from anything else, you need to be having those silo conversations to help organizations make that choice. We're nowhere near, as an industry, being able to flick a switch and transition like that. So what we've built is designed deliberately to complement into those silo technologies. So whether you're using service management from Ivanti or another vendor, whether you're using endpoint management from Ivanti or another vendor, you can use Ivanti Cloud with that to tie together these pieces.
You're describing there, that is still a form of integration, isn't it, rather than one platform?
Yeah, you're starting to offer a unified platform on top of integrated silo technologies. Okay. And that's, again, it's a step forward. As we do with many things in IT, it's a series of evolutionary steps. Each evolutionary step is built upon innovation, but it's taking you towards a destination. So we know some organizations will accelerate down that path really quick. They'll say, you know what, I'm sick of the complexity, I'm sick of multiple vendors, I'm sick of having these silos, I can't innovate. The way I'm going to change what my business does is we're going to accelerate towards Ivanti's unified IT vision.
Well, Ian, thank you ever so much. I've always enjoyed talking to you, and I think that's a great topic, lots of food for thought, and thanks for joining us in the SITS Spotlight.